Welcome to this week's edition of World Crisis Radio. This is Webster Tarpley reporting from Washington, D.C. The world teeters on the edge of global conflagration. The mad dog imperialists have taken control of the Obama White House. But at the same time, Britain's finest hour yesterday evening, the British House of Commons voted by a majority of 13 votes to repudiate the warmongers Cameron and Hague. Britain will not be taking part, as the New York Daily News headlines today. The British are not, repeat, not coming. No attack by London. So we have a situation where Obama has lost the support of the special relationship, lost the support of Great Britain. He has lost the control that the U.S. has normally exercised over Ban Ki-moon, the Secretary General of the United Nations. Obama has no hope of getting a resolution through the UN Security Council. We have Russia sending 2 significant warships, an anti-submarine vessel and the guided missile cruiser Moskva, to the waters of the Levant near Tartus. China, the Foreign Minister Wang Yi has called for restraint and repeated that only the UN Security Council can decide Chapter 7 measures. It's not a do-it-yourself kit for the aggressors in the White House, the State Department, and the Pentagon. Chinese media saying that the U.S. wants to posture as the judge, jury, and executioner, and that is rejected by the Chinese. So Obama has no British special relation, no control over Ban Ki-moon, no possibility of getting anything through the UN Security Council, no support from the Arab League. The Arab League, of course, is happy to condemn Assad, but they refuse pointedly to endorse a military attack on Syria. And at the same time, Obama is now getting an increasing backlash from the Congress. And the reactionaries are finally doing something momentarily good for world history. But watch out for those reactionaries. As we speak, there is a meeting of the National Security Council going on. It's 1 p.m. on the afternoon of Friday, August 30th. National Security Council meeting under the chairmanship of the Viper, Susan Rice. Susan Rice and John Kerry, whose wretched, bungling, incompetent advice have led Obama into this situation. He needs to fire Rice, Kerry, loopy Samantha Power, Jimmy Liar Clapper, and the rendition and torture expert Brennan, as well as Sequoia Hagel. Fire this incompetent, bungling group. They are way over their heads, and if he doesn't fire them, these, I think, are the obvious targets for impeachment. So once we've said impeachment, let's look at this situation. We have, first of all, a group of 54 Democrats, typically led by Barbara Lee. They want Obama to come to the Congress for a debate and a vote before any armed action against Syria. Now, this is a limited form of opposition. There is, however, at the same time, a group of 140 congressmen led by Scott Rigel or Rigel of Virginia. 140 congressmen, 150 perhaps by now, 20 Democrats plus. They point out that the attack is unconstitutional without a vote in Congress. And I would say that at this point, if Obama presses ahead with a solo attack, now that the British Parliament has repudiated this lunatic adventure, Obama is virtually guaranteed to face impeachment. However, this is an arm's-length proposition from yours truly. That is to say, this is simply a statement of fact. Obama, if you insist on attacking, the reactionary Republicans and fascisto Republicans will try to impeach you. They'll be happy to try to do that once you've destroyed your own base of support, which is heavily pacifistic, once you've negated the entire rationale of your political existence, which supposedly goes back to that famous October 2002 speech in Chicago where you opposed the Iraq War, we're told. There is no tape. Obama, this is simply a fact. I'm not saying that I support it. I'm simply saying this is what will happen. And, of course, once that impeachment effort it starts off, all the scum of the earth will be attracted into the impeachment coalition. We'll have neocons, we'll have neo-Confederates, we'll have racists, we'll have warmongers, we'll have white supremacists, we'll have the entire crew. There is no question of making common cause with that gang. And, of course, what will they do? Suppose they decide to impeach Obama and Biden, because Biden is now out on a limb himself demanding the attack. Then we'd have President Boehner. Would we be better with President Boehner? Would we have been better with President Romney? With President Romney, this attack would have occurred long ago. So the answer there is no. We are not in the business of trying to put the Republican Party in power. We are in the business of trying to put ourselves in power. We want to carve out a piece of power. And the strategy, I would suggest, goes back to what Lenin enunciated at the Zimmerwald conference in Switzerland in 1915, almost 100 years ago. And my variation on that is, turn the imperialist war into a revolutionary mass strike and contend for power based on that, not making common cause with the little weasel Rand Paul or Boehner or any of these other characters who are interested in power for themselves. No, turn the imperialist war into a revolutionary mass strike. And, of course, what the fast food workers are doing and other labor struggles, these are the things that we want to join into. And, of course, the Credico campaign, the Tax Wall Street campaign. We'll get a report from New York City a little bit later in the show that the Tax Wall Street Party, against all odds, with superhuman effort, has succeeded in putting the Tax Wall Street Party on the New York City mayoral ballot for November 5th with Randy Credico as candidate. Credico at this point is the only anti-war candidate because all the other Democrats are cringing. They don't dare contradict Obama, the Messiah. No, they don't want to do that. But Credico, I think, has the courage of his convictions. So here we are. It's the 30th of August. The National Security Council meeting is going on. We're going to hear from Bones Kerry in about half an hour. We'll try to reflect that if we can. And, well, the predictions that we've heard coming from a number of sources, Andrea Mitchell says the attack on Syria will occur on Monday, and that will make it September 1st, 2013, the anniversary of the unleashing of World War II, with the Nazi attack on Poland, and some of the methods being used by the Nazis to set up that war with Poland, I think, are being imitated in Syria by the rebels, by the opposition. And we want to remind everybody, September 24th in the evening here in Washington, D.C., to assert the cause of U.S.-Russian friendship, which has meant so much to the world. There will be a commemoration of the Russian fleets in New York and San Francisco. More about that later in the program. And back in a minute. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. What's up here in Washington, D.C.? It's the 30th of August. We're on the brink of general war in the Middle East and a possible world conflagration. But there's a fighting chance to stop this. And all those scribblers who write articles, we can have 12 signs that this war has already been decided. That's an excuse to do nothing and sit on your duff. That's contemptible. That's pathetic. I guess that appeals to libertarians because they like to sit around complaining and never do anything. They never offer alternatives, and they never fight to try to change it by taking some power of their own. Anarchists, same story, right? Left-wing and right-wing anarchists, they don't want to take power. It's always going to be somebody else. So, National Security Council meeting going on. Statement by Bones Kerry is expected. And today we're going to get the White House Syrian gas dossier, or better yet, the CIA State Department Syrian gas dossier. It's based on the handiwork of the British Joint Intelligence, the JIP, anyway, the Joint Intelligence body that they have. And, of course, has it been sexed up? Can Assad strike in 45 minutes? Have any scientists been found dead sitting under a tree? And so forth, right? What else is going to be in this thing? The whole thing is doctored. The Mossad 8200 committee. We're told there are going to be intercepts. The Mossad has an entity called the Bureau 8200 or something like this. They claim that they've got intercepts of top Syrian officials and others, maybe including Moher Assad. Well, we don't trust fabrications, falsifications, and frauds coming from the Mossad, right? We don't need to have an interested party leading us around by the nose. The Mossad has the same interest as the Syrian terrorist rebels. We're also told that the impact site has been doctored and degraded by military attack. Well, Colonel Wilkerson, the former aide to Colin Powell, says that's absolutely preposterous because the tissue samples and biological evidence is not degraded in any way by those things. And we've got Bandar implicated. This is an interesting story. We have an article written by a former Associated Press reporter, and this was posted on the Internet. If you go to my Twitter feed at Webster G. Tarpley, which, of course, has to be your constant guide. Yesterday, the Thursday, 29th of August, was one of the biggest Twitter days in recent memory. But this was a story posted on something called Mint Press News, mintpressnews.com. And that is now shut down. It looks like there's been a cyber attack by the CIA or the NSA or the Mossad or the DGSE, somebody like this, or the Saudis. You can't find it there anymore. Fortunately, Press TV of Iran has a summary, which you can find there. And the idea is that a Saudi militant in the Ghouta area, somebody notoriously linked to Prince Bandar. Prince Bandar, of course, is now the intelligence boss, the spy master, the covert operations czar of the kingdom. And this Saudi militant, this jihadi operating in that area of the western suburbs or eastern suburbs of Damascus, he began bringing in tubes and large bottles that were stored in a cave by very amateurish personnel, and at some point the poison gas fumes began to rise and lots of people got killed. So there's every reason to think that Bandar is the mastermind of this entire thing, with the Israelis working together. We're also told that some of these bodies that were shown come from elsewhere. Hey, that's a good anniversary. Remember Operation Canned Goods, set up by Goebbels and Himmler and such people. The Gleiwitz radio station of 30th to 31st of August, 1939. Remember, Nazi operatives took German criminals from prisons, dressed them in Polish uniforms, shot them, and then displayed the bodies around the Gleiwitz radio station. They pretended that the Polish army had taken over the station. This was used as a proof of a Polish attack, right? And Hitler then says, since 5:30 in the morning, we've been shooting back, and bomb has been answered with bomb. And that's the Second World War. We're too close to comfort. for that right now. If the Israelis bomb a Russian military shipment, or if the Israelis start shooting at one of those Russian vessels, that's when the missiles could begin to fly. Time to back off, back down. And that goes for you, Obama. You're so conflicted. Stay conflicted. You claim you haven't made a decision. Don't make one. So it's the anniversary, the 74th anniversary of the outbreak of World War II. All right, now let's look at the British. It's their finest hour, not any other time. This is it. Cameron and Hague, two Colonel Blimps, two Tory arrogant imperialists, and their little lapdog Clegg, the pathetic Clegg of the Liberal Democrats, tagging along, dragged along like the tail on the Tory kite. They come in, they want to have a vote in the House of Commons yesterday, Thursday, 29th of August, an immediate vote for war. But they failed to reckon with the ghost of Tony Blair, Tony Blair's ghost, Alistair Campbell's ghost, right? The monstrous fabrications of 10 years ago that dragged the British into the lunatic Iraq war. So we have the Labour leader, Miliband. Now, let me hasten to add, this guy Miliband is somewhat snake-like himself. We cannot trust him because he has carefully left the door open for military attack later on. I think Miliband says, well, we'll let Obama go ahead and attack, and then we'll join in, right? That will change the dynamic. Maybe not Miliband. But Miliband wanted this for himself, right? He'd been ridiculed by Cameron. He was weak. Now he can say, look at me, I'm a tough guy. I forced Cameron and Hague to back down. So the resolution failed by 13 votes. It means that significant number of Tory, conservative members of Parliament, the backbench, defected. Significant numbers, slightly smaller numbers of Liberal Democrat people have members of Parliament have also defected, and you had the various Scottish National Party, the Respect Party with our friend George Galloway, and the Welsh National Party, the Plaid Cymru, and so forth. They're all against the war. Some of them much more against the war than Miliband. And Miliband is going to have a hard time trying to turn that around at this point. So this hits Obama harder than anything. The mother of Parliament has voted no to Obama's lunatic plan. Now, in the middle of it, there is this thing called Crown Prerogative, which I guess we'll have to discuss in just a minute when we come back on World Crisis Radio. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. That article about Bandar being behind the poison gas by Dale Gavlak, who has been a stringer for the Associated Press, the BBC, National Public Radio, and Yahya Abaneh, filed on the 29th of August. And the story is that a Saudi militant, the guy's known as Abu Aisha, a victim, the father of a victim said his son and 12 other rebels had been killed inside of a tunnel used to store weapons provided by a Saudi militant known as Abu Aisha, who was leading a fighting battalion. The father described the weapons as having a tube-like structure. Others were a huge gas bottle. For this and other things, take a look at Webster G. Tarpley feed on Twitter. You got a lot of links there. We've still got this text, even though it's been taken down on the Mint website. All right, so the British. Now, notice at the end, though, Miliband had to specifically ask Cameron, are you going to go ahead and completely make this vote into a joke by attacking anyway with the help of the Queen using Crown Prerogative? So Cameron has said, no, I won't use Crown Prerogative. His government is about to fall. This guy, Hague should be fired, and he should be then banished by the Queen to an echo chamber where he'd have to listen to his own voice for all eternity, which is obviously his favorite pastime, but that would turn pretty boring pretty soon. This hits Obama very hard. It's also interesting, the British Constitution, since the British have no distinction between constitutional law and statute law, This changes the British Constitution, makes it harder to go to war in the future, an interesting fact. But the main thing is this hits Obama very hard, cuts Obama off at the knees, I would say. Now, this leaves the French. That is to say, Hollande and Fabius. Hollande, of course, is the classic wag the dog in this situation. The popularity of Hollande has plummeted to the 20% to 25% level. His absolute impotence, his inability to roll back austerity, to provide jobs, to get France out of this depression, that's what he's trying to counter. He's really trying to change the subject from his own domestic failure. And then we have Fabius, obviously bound very closely to the Israelis. He's the head of the French Foreign Ministry, the Quai d'Orsay. So Fabius is known as le laquais du Quai. He's the lackey of the quay. That is the quay, the Quai d'Orsay. So he is a leading warmonger in this. Now, here's the problem that they have. The vote in the French National Assembly is scheduled for September 4th. If Andrea Mitchell is right, the attack will already occur on September 1st. Others are actually speculating the attack may occur at any point right now. It could happen at any moment. What will the French National Assembly do if they are completely scorned, right? If they're made into a useless, irrelevant rubber stamp? Won't they at least bring down the French Prime Minister, Ayrault, some appointee of this Hollande? Hollande now says the attack can occur as early as Wednesday. Does that mean before the vote or after the vote? There's also an eagerness here to take the place of the British, that is to surpass the British in groveling and propitiating the United States. Back in the 80s, in the Italian press, you'd often see this expression, I Bulgari della NATO, that is, the Bulgarians were always thought to be the most obedient and the most slavish of the Warsaw Pact. And the Italian press often had crisis of identity. Is Italy the equivalent inside NATO? In other words, is it the most obedient and most cringing partner? Well, no, it's not Italy at all. It's France. France turns out to be the Bulgarians of NATO unless and until they vote against war. And if they do vote for war, quelle honte, right? Les adeptes de l'obéissance atlantique, les adeptes de la dénigration nationale. So that's a big problem for these French socialists. I hardly dare say this with a straight face. Okay, now let's look at some other countries. Britain, no. France, up in the air. Egypt says no. Foreign Minister Fahmy comes out, condemns the use of chemical weapons, condemns Assad if he did it, but no support for an armed attack. No. And indeed, there's a big fight going on in Egypt between the state newspaper Al-Ahram and Madame Patterson, the U.S. ambassador, still there. They accuse her of being in a conspiracy with the Muslim Brotherhood to destabilize the country. How about that? The United Nations, Ban Ki-moon. Now, Kerry, the bonesman, had called Ban Ki-moon, said, call off these inspectors. We don't care about these inspectors. To hell with your inspectors. We want to start bombing. Get them out of there. And Ban Ki-moon, amazingly, speaking from the Peace Palace in Den Haag, said, no, we're going to go through with this. So Ban Ki-moon demanded time for the inspectors. This was taken up by people in the British Parliament, and indeed, some of this delay is actually due to Ban Ki-moon. Amazing under these circumstances. Germany, it was Wednesday night when I began looking for possible defections, right? Always pay attention to countries that don't get in the American news. Germany, of course, is a big NATO partner in terms of military potential. And it turns out that a minister in the Merkel government, right, which is facing an election in about 1 month, Minister Niebel, I think he's the development minister, Niebel, Niebel, said, no, without a UN resolution, we will not take part. This means that the entire Bundeswehr and especially the Luftwaffe, the Bundesmarine, the Navy, so Air Force and Navy of Germany, not taking part. It's not quite as distant as Libya, but no military contribution. Italy, the Letta Bonino government says without a UN Security Council resolution, no Italian forces and no Italian bases for this aggression. That is also quite interesting. Spain, similarly, Spain says no, we're opting out. There are quite a few countries, by the way, that have it in their statute law that without a UN Security Council resolution, Chapter 7, use of force, they are not allowed constitutionally, legally, to take part. Austria, Chancellor Faymann of Austria says, it goes without saying that Austria will not contribute bases or forces, but he says Austria will not allow overflights. If you're coming from NATO bases in Northern Europe and you're going to the Middle East, Austria is a good place to fly over. Faymann says no. And that, of course, is the Austrian avocation. The OPEC headquarters is there. It really attempts to be a bridge to the Arab world in the same way that Norway has. We're still waiting, by the way, for Belgium, Netherlands, and Norway. Now, some people say, well, what does that amount to? That amounted to about half of the Air Force that was deployed against Libya. So that is significant. Canada! Oh, Canada! Harper says no. Canadian forces will play no role. This is a significant Navy and a significant Army, and it shows that the echelon block has broken up. This was actually even before the British. And Jordan, the king of Jordan, says no bases can be used. They're scared silly by this. And indeed, the king of Jordan was meeting with the Pope. The Pope is against war. I wish he'd be more explicit. But Pope Francis has said the only way out of this is dialogue. There must be a political solution. And he received the king and queen of Jordan in private audience in Rome. So you got it. Those are the countries. We'll go through the list one more time. But that's a big rejection front against aggression. Back in a minute. Coming, no attack by London. So we have a situation where Obama has lost the support of the special relationship, lost the support of Great Britain. He has lost the control that the U.S. has normally exercised over Ban Ki-moon, the Secretary General of the United Nations. Obama has no hope of getting a resolution through the UN Security Council. We have Russia sending 2 significant warships, an anti-submarine vessel and the guided missile cruiser Moskva, to the waste. Susan Rice and John Kerry, whose wretched, bungling, incompetent advice have led Obama into this situation. He needs to fire Rice, Kerry, loopy Samantha Power, Jimmy Liar Clapper, and the rendition and torture expert Brennan, as well as Sequoia Hagel. Fire this incompetent, bungling group. They are way over their heads, and if he doesn't fire them, these, I think, are the obvious targets for impeachment. So once we've said in support from the Arab League, of course, is happy to condemn Assad, but they refuse pointedly to endorse a military attack on Syria, and at the same time, Obama is now getting an increasing backlash from the Congress, and the reactionaries are finally doing something momentarily good for world history, but watch out for those reactionaries. As we speak, there is a meeting of the National Security Council going on. It's 1 p.m. on the afternoon of Friday, August 30th. National Security Council meeting under the chairmanship of the Viper, Susan Rice, waters of the Levant, near Tartus, China. The Foreign Minister Wang Yi has called for restraint and repeated that only the UN Security Council can decide Chapter 7 measures. It's not a do-it-yourself kit for the aggressors in the White House, the State Department, and the Pentagon. Chinese media saying that the U.S. wants to posture as the judge, jury, and executioner, and that is rejected by the Chinese. So Obama has no British special relation, no control over Ban Ki-moon, no possibility of getting anything through the UN Security Council, no. Welcome to this week's edition of World Crisis Radio. This is Webster Tarpley reporting from Washington, D.C. The world teeters on the edge of global conflagration. The mad dog imperialists have taken control of the Obama White House. But at the same time, Britain's finest hour yesterday evening, the British House of Commons voted by a majority of 13 votes to repudiate the warmongers Cameron and Hague. Britain will not be taking part, as the New York Daily News headlines today. The British are not, repeat, not